Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Jake Ballentine. Jake Ballentine is the founder of Speakers, Authors, and Coaches Network, a thriving community of over 10,000 aspiring and experienced message-driven entrepreneurs from all over the globe. He is an award-winning motivational speaker and success coach who has presented at over 500 events and is the author of Your Number One Goal, a step-by-step guide to reach any goal of any size, with a new edition coming out this year. His message to the world is that you can reach the mountaintop of your life. When he is not working, he enjoys having fun outdoors and spending time with his wife, Caitlin, and 3-year-old son, Jacob. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Jake. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
It's a pleasure, Dwight. Thank you so much for asking.
So, Mr. Jake, tell me your origin story. And I'm going to add a little bit before you start that. I'm a huge fan of the Star Wars sagas and Marvel sagas. And what really irritates me is they always start in the middle. And then when it's successful, then they talk about the origin. Me, I want to know. And I get why they do it, because sometimes the origin can be extremely boring, right? Let's be real.
Boring, yeah.
Yeah, but I really want to know what people's lives were like, right from childhood to where they are currently in their lives. So can you tell me your origin story, key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently?
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying, because the origin story could mean so many things. I go, origin for what? And you're talking about origin from childhood, origin of really who I am. Well, I grew up the youngest of 4 kids in a very loving family, a wonderful family. And I'll say this, that there was what seemed like something that was very unfortunate to our family ended up being such a wonderful blessing. So my dad was laid off from his job, and they didn't really know what they were going to do. My dad decided he was going to go back to school and become a teacher, but there was some time where he needed to go back to school and do all those kind of things. And so we moved in with my grandparents. And that's my 2 parents plus 4 kids. And then my grandparents was 8 people in a, 1,200 square foot house, just a kind of small old house, 2 bedrooms. So we're sleeping there's only 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, sleeping on couches, doing all that because there's just not enough room. And to me, being a kid, I never saw it as a bad thing. I didn't care. I was like, great, we're going to be with grandma and grandpa. That's exciting. But I'm sure that my dad, who was in his 40s at the time, I'm sure that he did not feel like, yes, I'm doing something so good for my family that we need to go move in with my grandparents. But I look at that time, and that time helped shape my life. One, to not be someone who's so focused on the material and focusing on being together as a family, meaning some more than anything else. But secondly, I got to have this relationship with my grandma and grandpa that I wouldn't have had. And my grandfather was a psychiatrist who's absolutely brilliant, incredible, brilliant man. It wasn't until after he died that I always thought that I was a person who I didn't think I was the type of person who would ever need therapy, until I realized after he died that I had therapy my whole life, and he just called it going to lunch with him, and I didn't know that. Uh, but I got to have that experience with him. My grandmother, is an absolute angel, and she got her wings last year and moved on from this world. But incredible person, absolutely incredible person. My parents are wonderful as well, but I got to have that experience with them because of this thing that I'm sure my dad was not happy with. Also, as a kid, we're very, very devout and faithful in our church. That's something that was a central part of growing up in the Mormon church. That's something that's very central to our family. But what we always had was our family mattered more than anything. I did a lot of activities, did a lot of things, played sports, did scouts, did all that different kind of stuff. But to me, I always knew that I had my family to fall back on. And even if something didn't work out well, I knew that my family was there.
That's awesome. Just a sec here. Sorry, listeners. I'm just writing notes.
Yeah, no problem. I mean,
my dedicated listeners know that I write notes. So.
Yeah, well, I could keep talking about things, but I don't want to just drone on, forever.
I don't mind. No, I've had some people's origin stories. 19 episodes in, I've had some people's origin stories 20 minutes long, and I've got a page of notes, and I'm just like enthralled. So if there's other things you would like to share,
yeah,
I have no problems with that. I just,
okay.
I will key on a couple things, and then we'll continue on with the origin since we've stopped for a moment. I love that fact that you talked about living with your grandparents and how it may not have been the best for your dad, and his mindset, because, but you got to connect with your grandparents. See, for me, I got to connect with my grandparents because I had health issues. So realize again, my dad was one of 18 kids. So we go to see my grandparents and there'd be tons of people there. But my grandpa, when I was a young man, he was like not even a teenager yet. He became blind because of cataracts. Back then they didn't have the surgeries we have today. So my grandpa and I'd go for walks with him. I'd grab my opa's hand, and he was a 6'3", his hands like just massive, big old German man. And we'd go for walks, and I'd walk him out, and he'd talk about the garden and stuff. And he really couldn't see and do anything anymore. All he seen was some like lights and that's it. He could see bright and dark. And he'd share stories with me. And I cherish those memories of that, where the rest of the grandkids or other kids, even my sisters, they'd be off doing whatever. I wanted to be with my opa because he was always so kind to me with my asthma and my health issues. He was always so, let them be, you and I'll hang out. And my grandma was great too. She used to play cards with me, and they'd, things that didn't involve physical exertion where I'd get sick. But that connection to the grandparents is a memory you'll have forever. Because I know me, even at 53, and that was like, let's say 40 some years ago, I was even young, longer than that. I wasn't very old. I remember that. It resonates with me, and the connection to family is so important. So yeah, if you want to continue on with that family theme, that would, like you said, the last thing you had said, I always had family to fall back on. And that is so important for me as well.
Totally. And with that being said, at least as a young child, on my mom's side of the family, on my dad's side of the family, I absolutely love my dad's side of the family, but we weren't in the same place. My dad grew up on the East Coast, and a lot of them are out that way. And so didn't have that everyday kind of thing. But with my mom's side of the family, all of my aunts and uncles and cousins all lived in the, basically the same area in Southern California, at least as a young child. And then as I got older, they kind of moved around to different places, but we always stayed really close. And I'll say, with my cousins, I feel as though I'm closer to my cousins than many people I know are to their siblings. And that's such a great thing. And it's been a really cool thing. Any event that you in the future, when we do live events again, when you come out to one of these live events, you'll see that, hey, well, who's this person volunteering at the door? Who's this person volunteering to do this and do that? It's like, well, that's my cousin. That's my cousin's husband. And that's kind of how, it's just kind of how I roll. Our family is something that still today I can really count on. And that, I think that has helped me so much with my confidence to do really anything, because I feel as though if I have a failure in my life, a quote unquote failure, I feel as though I have my family to to fall back on, and I have that. And I think so much of what people are doing with their um, going out and trying to achieve goals, so often what they're trying to do is try to prove their worth, and they are fearful of failing at that, because then it means that I'm not worth something. But to be honest, I've never really had those fears. I'm so grateful and so blessed for that, because I've had this family to fall back on. And that really, yeah, there's a couple other things I want to address, but in all reality, my true origin story is just the wonderful family that I come from. That's
That's
the true
awesome.
origin.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I resonate so much with that because, I think about all the different adventures, right? From my first, business, being a paper boy, even that was a business, and people don't realize, but it was. How supportive my parents were, even though I had severe asthma, and how some days there was no inhalers back then. There was no rescue inhalers. And my mom would come with me to deliver papers, or one of my sisters would come with me. And not once throughout that evolution from paperboy all the way to where I am now, um, as a financial educator coach, have I had anybody in my family ever criticize me or question. They were always 100% supportive. And I think it ties back to, you know, our faith too, because with your Mormon faith, and I'm quite familiar with the Mormon faith. I have a lot of friends that are Mormon. Even one, my future son-in-law is Mormon too,
Mm.
which is a good thing. He's got faith, he's got connection, and that family connection in my Catholic Christian faith, um, is constantly talking about the family unity and communication and being supportive, and don't say negative things, say supportive things. Was it always 100% perfect? No, let's be real. For me, maybe it was for you, but there was times and challenges where I didn't feel maybe necessarily supported. They may not have said things, but their body language said other things, right? But I agree with you. I resonate with that. My family is so important to me too, and that's how I raised my kids. And we talked off air about the fact that I had come to a moment in my life where I realized I was going to be a workaholic, something like my father. And I stopped that after a couple of years of realizing what it caused in my life, and what was I trying to achieve. And that was family, and always every single moment being present in the memories that we're creating with them, and being present, even if it's just a quick 30 minutes and you're touching base with them, or you're going to the park with your kids for 30 minutes, like with your 3-year-old. How many times do we as adults go to hang out with family and we're thinking about a million other things instead of being present in that little defined time? And I think one of the most powerful things that I heard in the last few years was by a mentor of mine, Ed Milet. Ed talked about the fact that, and this was before his dad passed away here just recently. And he talked about the fact that every time he sees his dad, he realizes that could be the last time. And he said, you need to think about the fact, how old are your parents? How old are your siblings, your own kids, your spouse? And how often do you see them? And are you seeing that, realizing that if you only see your parents, let's say they live out away from you and you only see them 2, maybe 3 times a year, if they live 10 years, you're going to see them 20 times, 30 times. Is that enough? And you need to, he says, it's not to make you sad, it's to make you wake up to the fact that every moment you're with them is another opportunity to get to know them better, them to get to know you, and you create a lasting memory that resonates for all time, right? Because your great great grandkids can go, great great grandpa Jake was amazing. I look at what he's done and what he accomplished, and he passed that on to his kids, that passed on to their kids. And that's what I want. I want a legacy of family more than I do of money.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about that, like entrepreneurship, people get into business for so many different reasons. And like for me, I guess those reasons have evolved over time. But right now, my very active focus with my business is going to a place where I have every decision I'm making right now is based on just like what you said. And it's being able to spend the time with the people that I want to spend time with. It's saying, okay, well, how can I build this business in a way that I can go here, I can go there? And that's something I've been blessed with already is that, look, earlier this year, when, hey, we want to spend, in January, hadn't been with my parents in a long time with COVID going on. And we wanted to go and see them. They're older and have some health issues and things. So after we had COVID, we thought, well, now's a perfect time for us to go because of having at least antibodies. There's questionable things on that, but at least for a short period of time. And so we went and we spent, almost 3 weeks there. Hey, I could still
Wow.
run my business
That's
because I had the
awesome.
internet. That's all I need. All I
Yeah.
need is an internet connection. And great, let's go and hang out with them. Let's go and do that. So that's such an important thing. A couple other things on origin, some things that really matter to me growing up. One, I would not be the man that I am today without the game of baseball. I would not be the man that I am today without the game of baseball. I was a very dedicated baseball player from the time I was like 10 years old. I was the kid that, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I really developed my drive during that time. It was my decision. What 12-year-old does this? As a 12-year-old, I said, I want to hit 100 baseballs every single day. I want to hit 100 baseballs every single day.
Wow.
And I did that. And my dad would take me to, he volunteered with the Little League. So he got keys to this batting cage that were down there. And, he'd feed 100 balls into this machine every single day. And that's another thing about time with, spending time with family. I mean, I got to spend that hour and a half every single day after school with my dad, him feeding those balls into that machine because that's what I wanted to do. Now, in case someone didn't realize, I never ended up becoming the third baseman of the Los Angeles Dodgers. But at the same time, I played baseball at a very competitive level and I loved it and had a great time doing it. But I learned so much from it. I learned so much from that experience. And I think maybe a lot of the reason why I was into that, I was into music, really into music as well, dedicated with music. So music and baseball, I think the reason why I got so into those things is because it was something I was naturally good at. I had natural ability in both of those areas. And with that natural ability, it took me out of the place where I had zero natural ability, and that was school. School was so challenging for me. I considered learning dyslexic, had an IEP, said that, I was considered learning disabled, all those different kinds of labels put on me. And all of that is to be said that now I look at that and all it means is that I didn't learn within the box that the school system teaches within. That was not my strength. But so much of our self-esteem, so much of our success scoring as kids is based on your ability in school. So school, I was able to get by, but I never felt like that was a place that I excelled. And so I put all of my energy in these two different places, both anything around music and then around baseball. Those two places where I put all of my energy. And then one other thing I wanted to share, since this is actually pretty fun, you asking that is usually when people ask a question, it's give me a sound bite so we can move on. That's kind of the idea.
This is relationship communication building 101. This is what it should be. It's what it should be.
And then one other thing is, as an adult, oftentimes people kind of not laugh at, but they don't quite get it. Why is here this guy, this grown man, 35-year-old man, father with a business and all that kind of stuff? Why is this guy so obsessed with Disneyland? What's the deal? What's the deal there? And I'll tell you that's a big part of my origin. That's a big part of my origin story. So we grew up 30 minutes away from Disneyland. We went there, once a year, something like that. And, we knew people who had annual passes. We thought that was so cool. I want to have an annual pass. That sounds so great. It just wasn't in my parents' budget. And I was 14, my brother was 16. And my parents said, look, if you guys go and make money and then like they kind of said this as thinking that it would stop us, right? They said, look, you guys go make the money and you guys keep getting money so that you can have gas money and parking money and all those different, you guys do that and then you can have it. And I think they thought that it was going to end there. But we took that as like, oh, great. Okay, like let's do that. And mentioning being very active in our church, we just looked around different people that were in that community who were involved in businesses, who either had a business or managed, that kind of thing. We said, who could we get a job with? Just doing something where we're just cleaning the office, doing anything like that. So we got this job cleaning an office at night. And so we'd clean this office at night. And then we saved up enough money to get the annual passes. And then we saved the money to, we kept working. So we'd have gas money and parking money and all that kind of stuff. And my brother and I we started going out there and we got to do this thing where we had these annual passes. We'd go all the time. It would be like, we'd just go for, Friday night, go for 3 hours and that kind of thing. And it was such an incredible experience, but this is what it was to me. One, it represented freedom for the first time, having real freedom as a teenager. But, and with that being said, it represented a dream that I had, and then I obtained that dream. And that was something that still to this day, I love going there or Disney World or anything like that, because it represents achievement to me, like a dream and having that kind of thing. But also it was the first time in my life where I realized that if I wanted something, I could go out and get it. It was the first time that I realized that became a real thing. It was the first time I really I had goals in baseball and that kind of thing, but this was something outside of me, outside of anyone else. This was just me. It was outside of a team, anything like that. And this is what I want to do. And I realized that I could set a goal. I could find a way to do it. I could do it, stick with it long enough to get there, and then be able to enjoy it. And that's where my entrepreneurial spirit started, was in that experience. And so that is the origin story of Jake Ballentine, the business person, the not just dreamer, but the doer. That is the origin right there.
That's where you started your mountaintop motivation.
100%.
You started your climb. And it all started with your love for Disneyland, and your parents in a sense, they were a catalyst, obviously, to you starting that goal and getting what you wanted. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's great though, because now people understand that are listening. Those that already know who you are, those that are going to now discover you, are going to understand it started as a young lad just wanting to go to Disneyland. And now you're at a point where you have a group that's over 10,500 people. You have the Influencers Academy, your paid group that I'm a part of. And now you've started your next evolution, which is your Mountaintop Motivation series, which, yeah, you're, you know what, brother, I hope you're proud of yourself, because I'm sure proud of you. You're amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So since we got into it, I'm going to jump ahead a few questions.
Yeah,
and
whatever you
since
like.
so you talked about, I know you're married, obviously, with a 3-year-old son, Jacob. Love the name, by the way, because my son's middle name is Jacob. His first name's Thomas Jacob, TJ.
Oh, great.
Called him TJ his whole life, right? So your family was unfortunately struck with COVID in the last year. The physical and mental are under fire when your loved ones and you are suffering through something like that. Many have heard stories of what others go through. However, I would love your take on it. I understand this can be uncomfortable to share. However, could you please share some of what your family and you went through during this time?
Yeah, well, I want to put this off, or I want to be able to say that we're very lucky that I know that a lot of people have much more extreme reactions. Now, to me, I always say this: I didn't have an extreme reaction considering what it could have been. However, it's the sickest I've ever felt in my life outside of the time I had pneumonia.
Wow.
I'm pretty miserable. My wife was a lot worse. We never went to the hospital, but we certainly questioned it. We certainly we kind of got to the point to where, well, if it's not a little bit better tomorrow, then we'll go. But at the same time, though, it could have been a lot worse. So I'm so grateful for that. And we got through it. And I'm a young, strong guy, so it wasn't like a huge thing. My son technically had it, but he didn't have anything more than the sniffles. It wasn't a big deal to him as a kid. And I think that's pretty normal for kids. But I'll say this, yeah, there was challenge. Some of the challenges were trying to figure out, I was trying to figure out, well, I do all my stuff through Zoom, so maybe I could still go to this meeting or go to that meeting. And I was just so wiped out. I just never felt so exhausted. I was just completely exhausted the whole time. And it lasted a long time too. It's like almost 3 weeks of just like, it was a solid week of being really sick. And then it was another 2 weeks of just feeling like, even though I slept 9 hours last night, I'm still exhausted. I'm just completely exhausted. But I'll put a different twist to it, not about the physical and those kind of things. Yeah, there was stress involved and that kind of stuff, but I never was worried about us dying or anything like that. I'm not downplaying the seriousness of it specifically for people in an older category, in an older age group, or people with pre-existing conditions, but I knew that we would be fine. But in a strange way, it made me stop. And it made me take time to just sit with my thoughts in a way that I hadn't done in a long time. Because I'm really good at doing. I'm really good at taking action. I'm really good at moving and just always moving forward. And I like that. Truth be told, I'm a little bit uncomfortable when I sit around. I'm a very physical person. When I sit around, I get antsy. And so sometimes I have a hard time with the being, just be and listen and that kind of thing. Introspection can be a challenge for me. In fact, one of the reasons I love the outdoors so much is because I can be introspective while doing something physically active. But this gave me a period of time where it forced me to slow down, like to a halt. And I feel like I got so much clarity during that time. So much clarity of things that were really needed for me to be able to sit and to be able to think and to be able to just listen without so much clutter going on. So in a way, it became quite a blessing for us.
What an amazing experience you went through, not in the sense of getting COVID, but the realization that you time to listen to my inner voice, time to listen to my thoughts and interpret them. Most people, I have talked to a few people that have had COVID. I know quite a few people. Unfortunately, I know people that have died from COVID as well. And they talk about the experience. They don't really want to share it, except for the fact that you can pick from their general conversation about it that they were miserable the whole time and they never ever had a perspective of something positive out of it. So listeners, that is so important for you to catch that. Jake understood, like his son wasn't that sick. His wife was the sickest of them all three, 9 hours of sleep, still being tired. We heard all the journey on the physical portion of it, and that's why I asked the question, what about the emotional aspect of it? So you answering that, saying that it made you stop and take time with your thoughts is very powerful. So no matter what happens in life, no matter what downfalls you have, whether you're mentally sick, physically sick, whatever the case may be, you are still in charge of the 6 inches between your ears. And Jake's proven that, right? Time, especially with something as severe as COVID, whether your son got really sick or not, it's still a traumatizing thing for your whole family. And, like you said, you weren't always in the best frame of mind during that 3-week period, but the end result is still the end result. The end result was that you realized your thoughts were important and that you needed to slow down, and it forced you to slow down. Right.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that.
Well,
yeah. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, you have a group on Facebook, right? It's right behind your head there. Speakers, authors, and coaches with over 10,500 members. What it stands for is obvious. However, what made you decide to tie the three together?
Well, tying those three together, I think that we live in okay, well, when I first started speaking, they weren't tied together. When I first started speaking about 10 years ago, as much as the internet had, yeah, the internet was obviously a thing and that kind of stuff, but social media really wasn't about business yet. I mean, there were some people doing it, but not really. And at that time, if you wanted to learn about being a speaker, you would go to a speaker coach. If you and it was hard to find, there weren't nearly as many. If you wanted to learn about writing something, you'd go to someone who was a writing coach. If you wanted to learn about being a coach, that I didn't even know that was a thing at the time. Honestly, I didn't even know. I wasn't even aware of it. But I believe so. At the time, I just went into speaking and I spoke full time all around the nation, keynote speaker. I literally, like, people think it sounds silly, but I did not know anything about the coaching business for 5 full years of being a full-time speaker. I didn't even know what existed. I didn't even know what existed. And a lot of that had to do with the internet had not, at least business internet, had not matured yet in the way that it has now. And if I started my business today, I would do it in a different way. It wouldn't be what I did 10 years ago. It would be a very different approach. Because at the time, it was like, well, the people who want to book me, they might be on Facebook, but I can't really find them there. I can find them with a phone number and with an email, and I'm going to contact them directly and do the idea of building something up on your own and doing that. Anyway, over the time, what I have realized is that when most people say that they want to be a speaker, that doesn't mean what a traditional keynote speaker is. That doesn't mean that. Most people, when they say I want to be a speaker, and I describe what the life of a keynote speaker is, that's not what they mean. They don't mean being on the road, 4 days a week, 9 months out of the year. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about they want to actually build something that's bigger than them. They want to speak on stages, but they also want to have coaching clients. They also want to have books in the back of the room. They also want to sell products and have an actual business. And the truth is that if someone is only a speaker, if someone's only a keynote speaker and doesn't have anything else around their business, they don't actually own a business. They're just a independent contractor who comes and does a service at whatever organization this is, and the business can't go on unless you show up. Unless you show up there, it cannot happen. And I also believe that anyone who is speaking without having a coaching program, or at least products and services and books, and they're leaving so much opportunity on the table. And so I like to think about it a little bit differently. I don't think anyone should identify as they are a speaker, or they are a coach, or they are an author, or they are a podcaster, or they are a blogger, or whatever they do. What we really are, in that introduction you read, message-driven entrepreneurs. In reality, you're not any of those individual things. You are a messenger, and those are all vehicles to share your message. So you can share your message through podcasting. You can share your message through speaking on stages. You can share your message through coaching and through group coaching programs and through products and through books and all that different kind of thing. But those are all vehicles to share your message. And so instead of putting yourself in this box of each one of these things has its own very unique business model. So if you go to just an author conference, they're going to tell you this is what it means to be an author. If you go to an NSA conference, National Speakers Association, they say this is what it means to be a speaker. If you go to something like ICF, International Coaching Federation, or anything, this is what it means to be a coach. I think all of the organizations who just specialize in one thing are missing that these all connect together. And in reality, we are messengers, and we're message-driven entrepreneurs. And these are all vehicles to share that message. They're all spokes in the wheel. And to be able to have a business that is actually a 360 approach, that is a holistic approach to business, and to have something that's going to be working in the way I see it as a much better approach to business, and not just business, but also life, because we want variety. I love getting on an airplane and going and speaking somewhere. But I got to tell you, when you've been home for only 2 days and need to go to bed early because I need to wake up at 4 a.m. to make it to the airport for my early morning flight to the East Coast, that can get a little bit old when it comes to variety. But if that's your only spoke on the wheel, you don't have a choice. You have to do that. But if you build in, well, great, I'm doing speaking, then I'm doing coaching, and then I'm have these products, and it's all together with one central message, but I'm using all these different vehicles to be able to share that message and make an income and an impact sharing it.
Wow. I love how you tied that all together. I'm so glad I asked that question. Because it's intrigued me since the moment I discovered you and your group. So I appreciate that though. But you're so right. All vehicles tie together to share your message. What's your message? So for me, for an example, my message is, helping people live life on purpose, not by accident. So that can come in so many different ways, right? From being an author to coaching my individual clients to, right, speaking on stages. So far for me, though, the speaking on stages has all been a captive audience, right? I'm invited to speak or coach or train on a stage to a captive audience of people that are there and in my industry. And
Yeah.
I want to level up and climb well out of that. Not that I still won't do that, but I want to be able to speak to everybody, not just I want people that are there, not because they feel they need to be there or they're forced to by their companies or whatever the case may be. I want people to be genuinely interested in my message and show up. And like you said, share your message, and these vehicles all help that. So, I like the fact of your 360 holistic approach, right? It is a very holistic scenario to be able to utilize our message and share it on so many different ways. So I like how you were honest, the fact that, 5 years before you realized the coaching side, right? And really, it's probably made your life that much better. And we can all say we realize that we wish if we knew today what back then, we would have done things differently. But in hindsight, like they say, it's 2020, you wouldn't be necessarily the same Jake though,
Oh, no, no, no. I
right?
don't mean that there's any regret. I just mean that I would do things differently starting today, because we're in a different
Oh,
environment.
to start over. Oh, because of the
Yeah, yeah,
internet
yeah.
and
I just
everything.
mean if we started
Oh,
today in
okay.
2021, it would be different. Not that I would do things differently in
Oh,
2000, in 2010. I
yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
necessarily do things differently then. And yeah, I love the time that I had. I love the time that I had on the road. I mean, look, I have seen, I'm not going to say every inch of the lower 48. Well, no, and I was hired to speak in Alaska too. I've never been hired to speak in Hawaii. Got to figure that one out. But I've been hired to speak, in
Yeah.
43 US states. And what's cool is a lot of times when I'm hired to speak, it's not just in big towns. It's in fly somewhere, drive 45 minutes or an hour into another part of the state. And man, I got to tell you, I've at least seen every region in this country, at least seen every region in this country. And more importantly, I've got to really know people in every region of this country. And as much as people think like people in the South are like this, or people in the Northeast are like this, or people in California are like this, or people in middle America are like this, people in Texas are like that, there might be little idiosyncrasies between those different subsects of people. But what I've learned is people are people. And I've done uh, school assembly programs for 1,000 high school students in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. And I've done high school presentations for 1,000 students in inner city Los Angeles. And I can tell you that a teenager is a teenager. They might have a few little, their circumstances are a little bit different, but in reality, people are people in all of those different areas, all those different experiences. And it's really helped me see that like a lot of the things that people think are just not true. They'll think, well, people who live there are weird, or people who live there are like this. And that's rarely true. There might be, maybe they have different foods that they like more than others, or they might have a little different way of saying certain words, but they're just all people and they have the same kind of things. And I talked to before every time I'd present at a school, I'd say, okay, I'd like to have a meeting with your school counselor, just a 20-minute meeting that morning before, I'd like to have that 20-minute meeting, and I'd sit down, I'd talk, what's going on? You don't need to tell me specifics about individual people, but you know things that other people don't. So what is going on? And it was like Groundhog Day, because it was the same things. Didn't matter what region it was. That school counselor was talking about the same things from place to place to place. And I started making the same joke all the time, because they'd kind of feel a little bit like, almost like that was representation of them. Like, well, maybe I'm not doing my job well enough or something. And I'd say the same thing every time. I said, well, I have a diagnosis for you. You are a high school. You are a middle school. That is the diagnosis, because it's the same thing across the board. And it's so interesting. So I love that experience, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
That's awesome. I appreciate the clarification. Yeah, we are a culmination of everything. And yeah, I didn't mean to come across that you regretted it. I was just saying that, we are who we are based on where we've been. We all wish things could have been different sometimes, but really in reality, embrace where you are at and keep on pushing forward. But yeah, so one of the questions I had here, I know you started your speaking career speaking at youth functions and now have spoken over 500 events. Congrats, by the way. That's an amazing accomplishment. I know you've touched and uplifted so many lives because of your ability to connect, understand, and teach on the human condition. It fascinates me how your servant attitude and being willing to step out on faith helped you. You attended and helped set up and run an event that eventually got you to one of your first speaking engagements. Can you please share with the listeners this fascinating story?
I'm not sure what the story is, Dwight. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Give me a
Clarification.
clue.
I've heard your story about where you attended that event and you helped set up chairs and you helped, and the next thing you know, they didn't have somebody there to speak.
Great. Now I know what you're talking about.
Sorry.
So at the beginning is, and because I was trying to think first, that wasn't how I got it wasn't my first speaking engagement, but it was as I was getting really, I dove into the youth speaking world. That was what I was doing. I was 100% committed to it. And I wanted to get involved in places that would do more than, because I was booking gigs just by calling schools on the phone and sending emails. I'm like, well, what can I do to get in front of more at the same time? What can I do to get in front of more at the same time? And also there's these leadership organizations. So I thought, how can I get involved within those leadership organizations and speak at those, because they have a higher budget. And so I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and there was an event going on that I was not speaking at. This person, that the leader of this organization, I'd sent many emails and made many phone calls, but never had I had a response to any of them. But it was going on in Anaheim, right next to Disneyland. So there you go. I had an excuse. Yes, I did go right afterwards. But
Awesome.
Might as well zip over while I'm here.
Yeah.
But I went, okay, I'm going to go to this organization. I'm going to go to the event. I'm just going to show up and introduce myself. I'm going to show up and introduce myself and say, hey, I'm Jake Ballentine. I live locally. Just want to, oh, hey, Jake, I've been meaning to respond to you. I'm like, oh, cool. Okay. Well, so he read the emails. He knows who I am. He's not upset by the fact that I had sent him emails. And I said, hey, I just knew you were here. I wanted to get to know you. I'm pretty new in the industry, but I'm pretty good at what I do. And I'd love to have an opportunity at some point to, maybe even just volunteer and do a workshop for your organization. But as of today, I'm not asking for anything other than, can I help you with anything? And so I helped with, setting up chairs. I helped with just little things here and there. And then later on in the day, he says, hey, Jake, I know this is super last minute, but one of our workshop presenters didn't show up. So can you present a workshop? I was like, well, actually, I have all my stuff in the car. I can do that. I have everything I need to do that ready in the car. And so I did that. I ended up doing, because a lot of times I do these like kind of round robin kind of things where they'll have the main keynote at one time, and then they'll do these workshops where, they'll be, depending, it might be 6 workshops, it might be 10 workshops. And you'll do it like 3 hours in a row, and you'll just have a new audience every time, because the kids will choose different rooms that they're going to go to for these workshops. So I ended up doing the workshop. And what ends up happening is when they come to the workshop, there's students from bunch of different high schools, bunch of different schools represented. And I collected a whole bunch of leads. I don't remember how many gigs it led to, but quite a few, led to numerous speaking engagements. It was certainly more than 5. Maybe it was close to 10, if I remember correctly, 8 or 9. Ended up leading to paid speaking engagements, all because this was a national conference, so all over the place. And then what ended up happening was I ended up keynoting that event in the next year. I ended up keynoting that event in the next year. I ended up having different opportunities within that organization. And I got to do that because I just showed up and got to meet people. And I say, why is this servant oriented thing? Why is this something you want to do? And when it really comes down to it, it's because I know that any business is about building relationships. Any business is about building relationships. And so you can connect with people, you can build a relationship. And if you have that trust with someone, then they're willing to do business with you. And so I just think like whatever it is, like it doesn't matter the business. I had a friend who told me that she was an insurance agent for a while. And one of her big clients was the school district. And that was like I don't remember what type of insurance it was, but it wasn't something provided by the school. That was just her region in the town, right? So that they had the agency, they have a bunch of agents, and they said, well, anyone in the school district, that's your territory. And so instead of being like everyone else and showing up and saying, can I hand out this flyer? Can I do whatever? She shows up and says, what can I do to help you? What can I do to help you? How can I volunteer? They said, well, we really need lunch duty people, but no one wants to do that. She's like, great, I'll do it. Lunch duty. So she starts volunteering as the lunch duty person. And then she became, I don't remember if it was top in the state, top in the nation, top in the individual company. I don't remember what the details were, but she said she became number 1 in whatever category that was of sales. And it was just because of that servant oriented, how can I connect? So if you know the right people, just go and be a servant, go connect and make a relationship with them.
Be humble, be
Yeah.
person that's just, yeah. And until the day I take my last breath, I'm always working at becoming the person that builds relationships and has that servant attitude. And I love that. I appreciate that response. Um, so I had the privilege and honor to get to know you this past year. And your message of climbing mountains, hiking, and outdoors are a big part of your life, as is music. Does the outdoors and music for you tie together? And if so, do you have any stories you can share on how they connect?
That's a great question. I mean, directly, not necessarily, but certainly indirectly. Yeah, for me, I'm a guy of a lot of interests, and I get really into things that I'm in. Just I kind of get obsessive over things. I get obsessive over certain things, and one of them being going outdoors. I just love it. It brings a lot of peace to me. It brings a lot of joy and adventure at the same time. Um, and music is something that it brought me so much joy in my life. And I still love music and I still play music, but it's not as big of a part of my life anymore as it was. But for a long time, it was the thing I could go to anytime I was down, anytime I was struggling. It was that thing. And for me, music is just this incredibly powerful tool for conveying emotion and connection. And my favorite place to perform music, even though I've had opportunities to perform in front of, one time I performed in front of 5,000 people. And that's a super cool thing. That's a lot of fun. However, my favorite place to play music is around a campfire. A guitar around a campfire, absolute. Like to me, that's the pinnacle. If I could choose between playing guitar with a group of people around a campfire or playing in front of 5,000 people, I'd choose around the campfire. So maybe that's how they connect there. It's a really great way to connect.
It's connection back to family, because most times when you're around a campfire, you're with around people, friends and family, people you love.
Yeah.
And music stirs. I absolutely love music. It's one of the things that the only difference between me and many other people is I use music to uplift me. not to enhance my current bad state of mind.
Yeah, that's important.
Right? And do people do the same with movies as well, and what they ingest with social media? But I love that answer. Campfire is the best music experience. I love that because I
Yeah,
love campfires. I
no, they're
love
the best.
I like hiking. I like being in the mountains. And where I live in Canada, where I live in the capital city, Edmonton, I can get in a vehicle and drive 3.5 hours one way. I'm in Banff, one of the largest national parks in North America, right in the Rockies, or I can drive 3 half hours the other way and go to Jasper, which you may have heard of both of them.
Yeah.
Both awesome experiences. I love hiking. I love being outdoors. And the thing I love the most about summer, I rent a cabin every year and we sit around. People come over different nights. People will come and we'll have a big campfire and everybody's just joking around. And we have not necessarily anybody with a guitar playing music, but we'll have music playing, over a speaker, and people are laughing and joking. And the campfire experience is just one of the most genuine, honest experiences. And then if you have somebody like yourself that can strum a guitar, it's even that much better, right?
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that memory. Um, okay, I know growing up with dyslexia, life handed you character building moments. You were blessed along the journey to have mentors and coaches early on in life that has helped you through this and more. Most would hide and avoid people when struggling with dyslexia, whereas you embraced music and sports and through this easily made and kept friends. What was your secret? Was it the mentorship coaching you were getting that helped you through that struggle? What exactly made you shine instead of hiding from the world your dyslexia?
It's an interesting question. I've never been posed that question in that way. Um, I, there's certainly strengths and weaknesses that everyone has. People have different strengths. And for me, I I don't know where my social um, connection and abilities come from. I've never had a challenge making friends. Um, in fact, I've never met a stranger. Everyone, my wife always says, "You make friends everywhere." I'm like, "Well, yeah, because they're already my friends. They're all my friends. Never met a stranger." And I that's always been something that I've been able to do. But I actually think it might actually have something connected, because in school, as much as I struggled at school, I was still a kid who wanted to succeed. I was never the kid who was just said, "Well, screw this, I'm not going to do it." I still wanted to succeed. So at a young age, I knew that I had abilities. If someone would just tell me it instead of me needing to read it from the book, I would be able to understand it and be able to do it. Anytime there was, some kind of presentation in school, I always excelled in that. But if it was just here, read this book, then take this test, that was something that was a big challenge. So I think a lot of it came from dyslexia, because as a kid, I would need to go, as a 10-year-old, as a 12-year-old, I would need to talk to the teacher, an adult, who at the time seemed like this super authority. It was probably like a 26-year-old or something, but still, they seemed like they were this authority, and I needed to go to them and I needed to have a meaningful conversation and say, "I'm struggling with this. Can you help me?" And I think that actually brought about, like, as much as the school side was struggling, it as I didn't love the experience, but I think that challenge and that experience really excelled my communication abilities, because I had to go and I had to lean on the things that I was good at, and then so that I could make up for the other side of things. I'll tell you this is, after high school, I went to college, just went to a community college, Pasadena City College, and I did really poorly there. I did really poorly, and I was put on an academic probation. I say I was kicked out of school. It's not really true. I was put on academic probation and couldn't come back for an entire year, is what it was, because of my grades. And I just went, "Forget that. I don't want to do this. Like, you don't want me to be here. I didn't want it anyway." Is kind of my attitude. And then you mentioned earlier being involved with the Mormon church, and I served a mission for the church. I was in the greater Seattle area, Seattle all the way up to the Canadian border. And I really excelled at that. I really excelled, that whole thing was something that really fit in well with who I was as a person. I was great at communicating, I just failed at school, but it was easy for me to do this. And I quickly got put in different leadership positions as a 20-year-old. I'm put in these positions where I'm being asked to be a leader amongst my peers, amongst 200 of my peers. I'm being asked to be a leader, and then the only person who basically is above where I was at was, I guess we're all adults, but a grown man who's in his 50s. Um, they call him the mission president, and so the mission president put me in these different positions of leadership because he could see that I had that ability. And he asked me one day, how come I wasn't going to college? Like, how come I, not at the moment because I was here, but he knew that I wasn't planning on going back to college. And he said, why aren't you planning on going back to college? And I said, look, I'm just not cut out for college. It's not my thing. I tried and I failed. And he looked at me and he said, why are you lying to me? And I was kind of offended. Like, what do you mean lying to you? I'm not lying to you. Why would he say I was lying to you? And he said, you just said that you tried and you failed. And I don't believe it. I don't believe that you actually tried, because I can see that you're an intelligent person. You School might not be your strength, but you are an intelligent enough person that if you really tried, you would have succeeded. I said, you have, maybe this is a weakness here, but have been given so many gifts and so many strengths. And if you were to use those strengths and apply it over here to make up for that, you would succeed. So I don't believe that you tried. And my challenge for you is that when we're done here, you're going to go back and you are going to make a decision that you're going to go back and you're going to succeed. I said, I don't really care. He was a businessman. He says, I don't really care if you graduate from college because I don't know how much it matters. But I will tell you this, if you run away from things because they're hard, you're going to set a pattern for the rest of your life that whenever something gets hard, you're going to quit and you're going to move on. And so I want you to go back and do whatever you can. So I did. I went back to school, got tutors, got help, did everything that I could. And I ended up doing really well in college. I graduated from college. I did really well in college. But that conversation was one of those moments that just set me up for success. And I sit here now grateful that I do have dyslexia. That is true. I still read things out of order. Someone sent me a text the other day. I read it 10 times before understanding. I was like, what is this guy meaning? And I sent him a message saying, what did you mean? And he explained it. And I'm like, oh, I just read it wrong, but that happens. But that's okay. I don't see it as something that holds me back anymore. I talk about my youth and say I was considered learning disabled because I don't believe that anything that I have is a disability. I believe that it is a difference, and every difference can be seen as a strength. And so I'm really grateful for that mission president. His name's Steve Ashton. And he was someone who just in that little conversation made a drastic difference to me.
Wow. And wow, what an amazing answer for that question. And yeah, I had multiple parts of it. You've kept up with all of it, but your mentorship from that leader is amazing. Like we all have somebody, and to be vulnerable and share the fact that you needed help through school, then you got to a point where you're getting told by somebody that you're lying to them and calling you out on your stuff is amazing. You could have gone the opposite way though. You could have just, put up a wall and walked away, but instead you were vulnerable enough to listen to the person and excel and move forward and take your character building moments and make it into something that was great, you didn't let your dyslexia define you. And I appreciate you saying that. And many listeners, you need to rewind this segment, if not the whole podcast, and listen again. So what would you say in your life are some things that you wish you had done better on the road to where you're at currently?
That's a tough question because I'm big into the idea of I am where I am because of the past. And so that's a hard question for me to answer because fundamentally I don't think like that. I don't think about mistakes of the past. Um, But if I were to say one thing that I would do differently, if I were to do things over again, it's not about some strategy. It's not about some anything. It's just believing in myself sooner. And that's a message I need now as well. It's every new level. There's a new level of belief. There's a new level of confidence that needs to come in. And it's just, that's it. It's like, I always get there, but I want to develop the habit of believing in myself quicker as opposed to it coming eventually.
That's a great answer. I like that. So Jake, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Oh, I love that. What I'd say is take everything, every mistake or every mishap, everything that you would call a failure, take it as feedback and not as failure. Because when it comes to keep going, the people who succeed are the people who don't see failure as such a big deal. Because they don't see failure as the end, because it's not over. You know, what's Les Brown say? It's not over until I win. You keep going until. Grant Cardone says, I cannot fail if I do not quit. So those kind of things might sound like cliches and niceties, but they're so true. Because the thing that stops people is that when they get to this place where they go, oh, I failed and it didn't work out, and then they give up. But instead, what they're missing is all of that learning that comes in from that experience. Like, what could you learn from this? There's so much to learn from this experience that you have right in front of you. So my biggest piece of advice is when you have a quote unquote failure, it's really not a failure. It's just a learning experience. But when you have that, see it as feedback, see it as something that you can learn from and that you can adjust, you can tweak, adjust, and take action again. If you can do that, you're going to succeed at anything you put your mind to.
That was a fantastic response to that. Thank you so much. All right. Failure is a stepping stone to your wins in the future, right? I tell people that all the time. So, well, our time is almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what's the best way to reach you?
Hey, best way to reach me, just social media channels, Facebook. Really, if you're someone who is like a business person in any way, come and join us in the Speakers, Authors, and Coaches Network. So that's facebook.com/groups/speaker author coach. So you can find it there or just type that in. And then the other thing, just I'm very open to messages, emails, anything like that. Jake@jakeballentine.com. Happy to help in any way I can.
That's awesome. And I'll make sure this is all put in the show notes, which are available at giveaheck.com. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Jake. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together, let us all strive to give a heck.